In the last video, we ended up talking about the celebration of the Sykes-Picot and the Balfour Declaration in London, and who were the people who attended that meeting. 1 year later, in 1917, Great Britain captures Jerusalem under General Edmund Allenby, and with him was a Jewish regiment called the Jewish Legion, who had been directed and backed by Britain's Minister of Colonies at the time, Winston Churchill. One of the privates of this regiment was David Ben-Gurion, the founder of the State of Israel. Also with the regiment was the Yves Jabotinsky and Edwin Samuel, Herbert Samuel's son, as well as Nehemiah Rabin, the father of Israeli 5th Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin. In 1918, Allenby receives his close friend Chaim Weizmann in Jerusalem. At the time, Jews numbered 50,000 in Palestine, whereas the Arabs numbered somewhere near 500,000. This means that 10% of the population was Jewish. Prior to the Paris Peace Conference, U.S. President Wilson sent a committee to Palestine led by Dr. Henry King and accompanied by Charles Crane to study the situation. They had reported that if the United States was to uphold American laws and the Constitution, they would support the Palestinian people to determine the future of Palestine. They reported that 9/10 of the population was against the Zionist movement, and so was the rest of Greater Syria. They also reported that all the British officials they had met made it very clear that the only way to accomplish the goals of the Zionist movement was through the use of force, and with no less than a speculated 50,000 soldiers. The end of their report included that the Zionist movement was an unjust one, and they recommended that Palestine be not made a Jewish commonwealth. In 1919, during the Paris Peace Conference, and unfortunately for the Palestinians, the U.S. did not take into consideration the Henry Crane report. Great Britain was represented by Arthur Balfour and David Lloyd George. The Zionist delegation was led by Chaim Weizmann. The latter had submitted an area that was to be the new Jewish state starting from the Red Sea, engulfing the Dead Sea and stopping at Amman, Damascus, and finally Beirut, using as its border the Hejaz Railroad. During the conference, Allenby and David Lloyd George pushed the Prince Faisal bin al-Hussein to sign the Weizmann, what came to be known as the Faisal-Weizmann Agreement. Faisal added with his own handwriting an amendment to the agreement that the agreement that agreed to Zionist goals in creating a Jewish state in the area would only be valid if the Arabs were given their independence, which they were not. There was a Jewish movement that involved intelligence, as Hillel Cohen, historian and researcher at the Hebrew University, where the Jews used some of the good relationships with the local Arabs to scout lands for sale and use their contacts to discover any plots to attack Jewish settlements. They also collected information on the Arab public opinion in regards to the Zionist movement and how they felt about it. In 1920, the British assigned their very first governor of Palestine. They chose the Zionist Jew, Herbert Samuel. Samuel was the same person who had submitted the Future of Palestine document to British Parliament, suggesting that Palestine needed to have law reforms to make it easier for Zionists to buy land, establish companies, and organize immigration. The second article of the British Mandate's agenda was to prepare Palestine for a Jewish national state, exactly as Samuel had intended in the Future of Palestine document and as supported by the Sykes-Picot Agreement. Letters show that Allenby and Samuel were very good friends and agreed completely on how this was to be done. His first change was to make Hebrew an official language of Palestine, and he added the letters A and Ya in Hebrew before every official mention of Palestine to represent Eretz Yisrael, which means the land of Israel. Herbert Samuel also started building infrastructure for a future Jewish state in Palestine. He started building water stations, electric stations, and workshops, as well as endorsing a separate education system for the Jews. Paired with this was the fact that he was starting up a separate and individual Jewish army composed of Jewish people in Palestine. What was to come, which was an immigration of hundreds of thousands of Jews, was only possible because of the British Mandate's support for Herbert Samuel's plans and for Zionism plans in Palestine. Stay tuned for the next installment.